Everyone was going to lose a game in the SEC in 2024. You kind of knew that. And Kalen DeBoer probably figured it was going to come against Georgia or Tennessee or maybe even LSU on the road in Death Valley. But nobody, and I mean nobody, predicted it was going to happen to Vanderbilt. But now the Crimson Tide realize they got to deliver their best punch if they want to make it to the college football playoff. How does Kalen DeBoer and the Crimson Tide respond? And also, how does South Carolina get back on track down in Titletown, USA? Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we're going to see this weekend at Bryant-Denny Stadium as the Gamecocks travel down to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide. Real quickly, make sure that you smash that subscribe button and the ring notification down below, because this is your number one source for all things SEC, live shows, reactions. We also got previews, post games, and everything else. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure that also you download the podcast version of the show, really wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is sponsoring the SEC Unfiltered Tour, and they're sponsoring your wallet to give you a little bit more cash when you play. Download the Prize Picks app, use the promo code SECU, and get a $50 instant play on your first $5 plus lineup. You're not just making picks on plays, you're making picks on players, hitting the over, the under, who comes out on top. And you know that you can win a little bit more cash and do so with a fun time. Do it with Prize Picks. Use the promo code SECU for $50 with your $5 plus instant play. Dave, what happened? I mean, it has been, at this point, a little over 48 hours since we saw what went down in Nashville, as the Cumberland River is still feasting out pieces of yellow from that field goal post that somehow still resides. What happened in that game out at First Bank Stadium? Because it wasn't just Alabama losing to Vanderbilt, something I never thought I would say in my lifetime, and I think many other people would agree with, but it was how they lost. And this is the most important part when it comes to Alabama moving forward. Vanderbilt outcoached them. Vanderbilt outplayed them. Vanderbilt out physically worked them. Vanderbilt looked like the more dominant team, and this is Vanderbilt. And it's disrespectful to put that type of nonsense on Vanderbilt. It's disrespectful to kind of start off the show with that aura around the Commodores. But at the same time, it's Vanderbilt. At the exact same time, it's Vanderbilt. And this is Alabama, who last week held their own and basically looked like the sheer most can't-miss team in college football, headlined by Jalen Milroe going into halftime against Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I think the low-hanging fruit would be you overlook Vanderbilt. Maybe some of that's true, but like you said, you got to give your flowers, as the people say in today's age, to Vanderbilt. They look prepared. They looked like they took advantage of their bye week.
100%.
It was just like, hey, we're going to have a good plan in here, especially offensively. I mean, I think it came down to scheme. I mean, again, outside of the whatever you want to call it, lack of motivation, again, that's stuff we can't – there's no data to prove that. I think that happened a little bit, but you got to give Vanderbilt credit. And like we talked about on Sunday Funday yesterday, it wasn't a fluke. On Saturday, like you said, a little less than 48 hours ago, Vanderbilt was the better football team. It was not a fluke. Yeah, you have the Jalen Milroe pick six that probably falls to the ground 9 times out of 10. Wasn't an awful decision, but from going back and watching the game. But still, you got to give Vanderbilt credit. They made plays when they had to. I think a lot of it was really just scheme there, Cole. I think defensively, Alabama got out game plan. We talked about it on Sunday Funday as well. I think one of the more underrated assistant coaching additions in the offseason. And maybe it won't get talked about unless Vanderbilt goes to a bowl, wins 7-8 games. But nationally, people won't talk about is Tim Beck getting hired at Vanderbilt. And then also give Clark Lee credit, saying, you know what, if somebody can't get the job done at the coordinator spot, I'm just going to promote myself up to this position, and I'm going to take care of the defense. And again, I think we all kind of fell out of love. Maybe it's the wrong word from a Vanderbilt perspective. Like after the game, and we took them a little bit for granted. But I mean, Vandy could easily have. They already have one. They could easily have 2 top 10 wins against Missouri. But from Alabama, I think you just got out schemed defensively. I mean, your offense ran 53 plays. I mean, they really weren't on the field that much. And to be fair, where Bama has advantages against teams like Vanderbilt, and this is, I think Helen Keller can tell you this, depth, players, personnel. when Bama only has the football 53 times, Vanderbilt's fresh, especially when their offense is keeping the ball for 40 minutes. Their defense is not getting worn down, so you don't have to go face that depth where you can go start seeing the chinks in the Vanderbilt armor from that perspective, from a depth standpoint. I think they got out schemed from a triple option standpoint. I don't really think the scheme matches the swarm defense, what Kane Womack wants to run. And again, I don't think this is more of a scheme thing. I don't think Bama's going to see this every week, but it's a copycat sport. Call it what it is. All these coaches would admit that. People are going to see what Vanderbilt did. Not every team has a Diego Pavia, so you can't go adjust from that perspective. But you best believe some teams are going to run some option stuff against this Alabama defense and determine where their 5-tech, 7-techs line up and see if they can actually defend that. I mean, I would if I was a coordinator. I'd factor that into the game plan. But I think really, I mean, outside of just the easy, low-hanging fruit, all Alabama overlooked Vanderbilt. No, Saturday wasn't a fluke. Vanderbilt was the better football team. Bama's got some scheme things specifically on defense. They got to get figured out.
I think you got to realize this, Dave. That option is going to be very prevalent in this matchup because of what you have in Lenore's cellars. And let's just also call it like it is. When you talk about an Alabama team, it's one thing to say Nick Saban lost in year 1 to Louisiana Monroe. Nick Saban did not have a top 5 man-ready roster that was already playing up to a certain level against Georgia, that looked dominant on the road against Wisconsin just a few weeks prior, that looked like they were already punching their ticket to the college football playoff. Some people were writing it in permanent ink. That being said, we also have to give a lot of credit to Vanderbilt because of this isn't your mom and pop or even grandfather's Vanderbilt roster. Diego Pavia, what you see from Clark Lee, his true love for what is Nashville football, they embraced it. They did. But this is also a time for you to get right. And it's really a time for you to get right defensively. The last 6 quarters underneath Kane Womack, over 500 yards of offense allowed at 67 points. That's unacceptable for a Nick Saban-led team. That's unacceptable for a Kalen DeBoer-led team. That's unacceptable for everyone that has ever existed in the realm of college football because of it's Alabama. That's the problem here. It's Alabama. And there's so many things that need to be corrected, and they need to be corrected quick. Here's the good news and also kind of the bad news. Not every game is going to be a cakewalk for Alabama. It's not going to be a cakewalk for anyone in the SEC outside of maybe when you play Mississippi State. But you are catching a South Carolina team for the 3rd straight time where it feels like the opponent that's coming into their place or they're facing off against, they're entering must-win mode. LSU need to get a marquee win after losing to USC early on in Las Vegas. Ole Miss need to get a marquee win after losing to Kentucky. And then, of course, now you have to throw in Alabama, who just lost to Vanderbilt. And they're going to have to win with some style, too, against some other opponents. Maybe not. You're going to have to see Tennessee. Maybe it won't happen against LSU. But against teams such as Mississippi State, such teams like South Carolina, Missouri, they're going to have to win with some flair at this point.
Yeah, no call. I think you're 100% right. Shane Beamer's sitting there like, my schedule's already tough enough, but then you factor in some of this other context to go along with it, that these teams are probably losing a little earlier than I thought they would. And now they're not overlooking us. And again, I don't think Shane Beamer's sitting there like, I don't want teams overlooking us. I'm trying to get South Carolina to the point where, like, hey, we are the team people are preparing for. But it is a little unlucky break. I guarantee you he didn't think Ole Miss was going to lose to Kentucky. He definitely didn't think, like the rest of us, that Vanderbilt was going to beat Alabama. But for Shane Beamer, then you're right. It's about consistency. I feel like, again, kind of similar to the rest of his tenure so far in South Carolina, it's been a little up and down, a little up and down. I mean, this was an interesting quote when I was prepping to do this preview that I found at post-game. His offensive game plan didn't really – I guess somebody asked him what the offensive game plan was against this Ole Miss defense, which we've talked about. It's definitely improved. They got more depth than they have. But this is the quote. Quote, offensive game plan was able to – he doesn't answer it. They are good on defense, obviously. We knew they were going to be a challenge up front to block, and they have really good players. The game plan was ... We are who we are on offense.
Yeah.
That doesn't give you a lot of excitement.
Don't say the quiet part out loud. Just don't say the quiet part.
Yeah, it makes it a little – if you're a South Carolina fan, you're just kind of like, so we don't know what we are offensively, huh? We don't know what we are. We don't have any identity. And we talked about it on Sunday Fun Day. I keep saying that. I feel like Dow Loggins does – if you really asked him and Lenore Sellers are just not a perfect fit for each other.
No.
I think, granted, South Carolina fans are a smart fan base. They would know it. Yeah, anybody's going to take, I think right now, Spencer Rattler over Lenore Sellers from a stretch field vertically. But I think Loggins wants somebody who can come in and stretch the field. As of this moment, that's not Lenore Sellers. And he also doesn't look 100%. You can tell he got banged up in that LSU game. That's still kind of bothering me. He didn't look like he was totally 100% fluid on Saturday. What is the game plan, though, going into this? If I'm them, though, I mean, you're a little excited potentially in the option because you could see, hey, there's some holes. Bama doesn't fit their gaps well. Now, I think there's a little bit of a difference between Diego Pavia and Lenore Sellers. But do you go back and do they bring in Robbie Ashford a little bit into this game plan? I mean, he did rush for over 200 yards, 2-3 seasons ago with Auburn and Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Cadillac was just trying to get the job, and they were just trying to keep it close. Now, I will say, I think you would admit here too, Cole, if you bring Robbie in, there's also going to be some mishaps too. We saw the fumble he had on the fumble exchange with Rocket Sanders in the fourth.
You're going to get 5 great players. You're going to get 1 turnover.
100%. You got to be able to live with that. Again, I don't think you make the quarterback change, but I do see where you would be interested in bringing Robbie in for
there's plays there that could work for sure.
To get to the edge, to try to stretch this Bama defense horizontally, which is what Vanderbilt was doing. Can you show them a lot, keep them to be disciplined? I would at least try it. Again, offensive line, I mean, I feel like it's been a struggle for South Carolina since the FDR administration. And then the weapons on the outside, really, no one's developed. But to be fair, you've played a whole game without Lenore Sellers against Akron, so the numbers are going to be skewed a little bit. Robbie Ashford runs the football. So they hadn't had that person to go distribute the football yet either. So, again, where does South Carolina go? Where do you attack this Kane Womack, quote-unquote, swarm defense? I think you got to factor in. It starts at the run game. I think you got to keep the ball away from Alabama. You kind of got to take a play out of Vanderbilt's playbook. Like, hey, guys, let's go be decent on 1st and 2nd down, and let's give us manageable situations. 3rd and 4 or better. Again, we're not going to complete them all, but we just saw Vanderbilt complete 12 of 18 third down conversions and 13 for 19 on 3rd and 4th down conversions. That's where I think we got to keep the ball at Alabama, who wants to make explosive plays. If I'm South Carolina, if I'm Shane Beamer, Dow Loggins, I think I'm going to try to possess the football and see if we can replicate another game plan against Alabama defense for back-to-back weeks.
Let's continue to talk about game plans for South Carolina for a minute. I agree with you. Vanderbilt held the football for nearly 43 minutes, 42:08 to 17:52. They dominated. They dominated the time of possession. And the main thing, and you brought this up, making it 3rd and manageable. That is going to be life for Lenore Sellers. That's going to be life for Juju McDowell, for Oscar Attaway, for Rocket Sanders. It's going to open up the playbook. And Dow Loggins needs to kind of get into his element, because at this point, his morale rate, his likability standpoint is entering the 4th layer of hell. It's that low in Cole.
It's getting up there with Marcus Satterfield, right?
It may be surpassing Marcus Satterfield pretty quickly if things don't get right. And maybe this isn't a game where you get right, but it's a game where certainly you're trying to show I am the right fit for this. And at the same time, you have to realize whatever you're stuck with at this point is what it is. You're not replacing Lenore Sellers with Robbie Ashford and drastically changing the playbook. If South Carolina wants to go ahead and make a personnel switch at quarterback to work with a guy like Dow Loggins, they're going to have to wait until December when the transfer portal opens up. That's just the game and pace. Defensively, it's going to be really interesting to see how you get more, I would say, consistency in closing the gaps with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, because there were plays in that game against Ole Miss where they kind of took away the rushing element, and then there were plays where they just allowed explosive up the middle for a gain of 7, gain of 9, and it wasn't just Matt Jones, and it wasn't just Henry Parrish. There were play design runs where you did see Jackson Dart be able to keep it upfield and tuck his shoulder, get that extra element, and you're going up against Jalen Milroe. And much like Diego Pavia, and much like Lenore Sellers, and much like you could even throw in Ashton Genty at this point, they know how to run the football. They know how to run the football in situations to make you miss the line of scrimmage and then just immediately blast off into the open field. I mean, go back and look at that Alabama game against Georgia 2 weeks ago. Look back at that game against Wisconsin a few weeks ago. The consistency of what you saw from Jalen Milroe and his ability to stay horizontal before breaking up vertically put defenses in a blender. And it eventually helped Alabama coast their way to victory against Wisconsin and take a 4-possession lead against Georgia, who still, for my money, has one of the best defenses in college football. And yes, South Carolina, very good defense in college football. In fact, for my money, they're probably a top 5 defensive line in the SEC, if not a top 3 defensive line. Their secondary has playmakers. Jalen Kilgore looked good at times. You saw Nicky Manwari, he looked good at times. So there's a lot to like. But a quarterback like that can beat you, and he can beat you with his arm. He can beat you with his legs. He can beat you with just his mentality to be able to get that second element and that second gust of wind. That's kind of where we're at. And so I do think that that's something that you're going to have to look for South Carolina. Make it third and uncomfortable, where basically if you play perfect schemes, if you play ideal situations where a Debo Williams is spying or a Jalen Kilgore is spying or Nicky Manwari is able to kind of take away the slot position, you're going to have to force Jalen Milroe to throw the football. And again, we did see multiple jaw-dropping catches once again from Ryan Williams, multiple highlight grabs from Jeremy Bernard. But will it happen against a better secondary? You and I can both agree that Vanderbilt looked like the more prepared team and the more physical team, but I feel like that you would take South Carolina's defense over Vanderbilt defense on any given Saturday. That's kind of where we're at. And so I do think that that's going to be something that we have to talk about. For Alabama's standpoint, I think it's getting back to what you know best. Jalen Milroe is a running back. Let me phrase that. Jalen Milroe is the perfect running quarterback. That's what you like about his game. Like Nico Iamaleava in the Arkansas game showed you why the game plan needs to be more so predicated to elevating his legs. Get back to that. Get back to showing what is your best asset. And the best asset for a guy like Jalen Milroe is to keep the ball moving forward. You know that you have a deep ball. You know that you have a cannon of an arm that can reach any one of these receivers. Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard. You can even go CJ Dippre across the middle on an 18-yard gain if you want to. But the fact that you also can be mobile, the fact that you don't have to sit and wait in the pocket, the fact that honestly your third read shouldn't be, let's go to pick number 1, let's go to number 6. It should be, oh no, my first 2 guys aren't open, tuck and run and just get 7 yards. That is something I think that you have to look for if you're Alabama in this game, especially if you're Nick Sheridan, because Sheridan called up one of the better performances I have ever seen by an offense against Georgia in the first half in Tuscaloosa. You're back in Tuscaloosa. Get back to that version. Don't worry about the trickeries. Don't worry about the highlight plays. Don't worry about the snap movements, because if it wasn't all just, playing with a cushion and kind of giving a little bit of lackluster, it wasn't just pedestrian play calling in the second half against Georgia. They tried to mix things up and it didn't work. Get back to what worked in the first half against the team that is going to make it to the college football playoff if they go 10-2. Get back to being the Alabama that we saw a few weeks ago. And that was letting Jalen Milroe utilize his legs and be the weapon that he is, not just the quarterback that he is.
Yeah, I wasn't really disappointed in Alabama's offense against Vandy. It's just they didn't really have
35 points. It's a good thing. Nobody's complaining. Nobody's complaining with 35.
No, I mean, outside of, again, you can't take these away. Outside of the interception, the strip fumble, and then Ryan Williams dropping it on 3rd and 14 of all he catches 9 times out of 10, Bama goes down and scores. I mean, I think if they don't get the strip sack with 6 minutes left, Bama's down 5. I think Bama was, had back-to-back 12 to 15-yard plays. I think they'd have probably gone and scored. That was a first down play where Miles Capers stripped him. But I think offensively for Bama, I thought they abandoned the middle of the run game a little bit, maybe to give that defense a little bit of a rest because they were on. Again, Bama the last 2 years a little bit, not so much this year, but really last year, the offense with Jalen Milroe could get a little clunky from a term standpoint. Like it was just boom or bust. It would be ugly. It'd be 3rd and 15. They could convert. Again, this year, it's a little similar boom or bust. If I am Clayton White, if I'm the South Carolina defense, and like you said, Cole, they're better personnel-wise for sure than Vanderbilt from top to bottom. I think you take away the deep balls. That's what you got to do if you're South Carolina and you say, hey, we are making them. We're going to force them to be patient enough to establish a run game in the middle of our interior, which we think we could hold up with. Again, we're probably going to give up some runs, but with guys like TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, we think we can hold up and hold our own. We'll give up some yards, but let's make them drive the field 8, 10, 12 drive plays and see if they can be patient enough to go score on us. That's my game plan. They may score on us a couple times, and they probably will. But you know what? We're not going to go give up that. Man, dude, that's a 75-yard dagger. We had them at 3rd and 12, dude. We like 3 out of those 4 plays on defense, we dominated, and we just give up a 75-yard bomb. It's like, God, come on. That's stuff you can't do against an Alabama offense. You got to take away the explosive. And again, Ryan Williams, just a complete alien, especially the balanced body control. Back-to-back weeks. I don't know how he stays in bounds on 2 plays. But like sometimes that's just going to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to make plays. But I think if I'm Clayton White, I'm going back in that probably cover 3 high shell, and I'm going to force you to drive the entire field on me. Easier said than done, but I think that's going to be the game plan if I'm Clayton White from that perspective. If I'm Alabama, Nick Sheridan, a little disappointed if I was going to take anything from the offense outside of the turnovers, would definitely be, hey, man, like, you only ran it on back-to-back plays, I think, this past Saturday 4 times. Like, try to establish the run, dude. I think you got some pretty good backs in Jay Miller and Justice Haynes. I think you should be able to establish the run, get back to that, at least give your defense a little bit of a rest. I know you want to be explosive. That's what Jalen Milroe wants to be. But I'm with you. Even add in Jalen into the design run game. I think you got to start establishing the football, because you know what? If you're going to get in these high-scoring shootouts, which looks like Bama's going to be in, like you brought up the stats, Cole, for the last 6 quarters defensively, and that's kind of what Kalen DeBoer was at Washington.
You're not changing it.
You got to slow it down and say, look, we're not great schematically right now. We're really young on the back end. We're going to give up some plays. Let's just not put them on the field as much. Again, they're going to have to go play well and win some games against good teams, but let's probably just not go put them on the field as much. That may be a little bit out of our comfort zone offensively, but I think you got to play some balanced football from Alabama offensively.
Dave, when you and I do shows, we talk about players to watch. I'll start first when it comes to South Carolina. I got to see somebody be that wide receiver 1. I don't know who it is. I'm going to go with my gut and say, because of how Alabama is going to line up in this game, really how Alabama might have to line up in this game, because we're going to talk about it before we give our predictions. I'll go with Joshua Simon at the tight end spot. There were plays last week against Ole Miss that you watched as Sellers kind of trusted who was his tight end. Mazio Bennett, you hope to have a good performance. You hope that Jacobs has a good day. You hope that Campbell was able to make that big-time play at the back of the end zone. Nick Harbor as well, 3 catches, 16 yards. But for me, Joshua Simon, that has felt like at times the one constant that is there for a guy in the North Sellers. And I want to believe that he will be there, especially on 3rd down, especially on 3rd and manageable, especially inside the red zones where maybe you get some mismatches when you're playing either a nickel defender or a safety is a little bit too lenient. That's a guy I have to look for when I'm talking about this South Carolina team. And for Alabama, it's anyone but Ryan Williams. And that seems like a cop-out. It does. Maybe I'll just go with Jeremy Bernard because I was so high on him coming out when he joined the team from Washington. But still, it has been the Ryan Williams show, and I get why, because if he has just been such a stud, he's 17, and he's making plays that most first-round picks won't make in their entire career. But outside of a few catches from Jeremy Bernard, it has been a very much 2 or 3 possession. Let's see what we got whenever we get number crap. Why am I blanking out? Number 2 available.
Yeah.
And also Kendrick Law missing some time. Kobe Prentice missed some time. It just felt like that nobody has been able to kind of break out. Kobe Prentice in that game had 1 catch for 15 yards. You're without Kendrick Law. So somebody
he went out. He was hurt.
Exactly. So you have to have somebody step up. And it may be one of the younger players. It may have to be one of the younger. It may have to be a freshman. You know, just because of you're 17 or 18 years old and you're splitting reps with seniors does not mean that we don't need to put you on the field. Down in Texas right now, Ryan Wingo is seeing reps because if he is the best fit for the team. You're watching as Ryan Williams is getting stats because he is the best fit for the team. You're seeing it at Auburn, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons, seeing the field because they are the best chance to elevate the team status. That's got to be my MO when it comes to a team like Alabama in this game, because you can't afford to show more weakness in this matchup because you still got Tennessee. You still have to go ahead and take on LSU, and you still have Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And also, let's not call it just a spade a spade. You also got to go ahead and play against freaking Oklahoma in Oklahoma with that defense. So somebody's got to step up. I'll go with just Jeremy Bernard as more than just a 3 catch for 70-yard day. I want to see him have his breakout 100-yard performance.
Is this just all? You said just offense, or just anybody?
You can do whatever.
Right,
just 2 players.
I like the Josh Simon one. I agree with you because I think Eli Stowers, the tight end for Vanderbilt, had a big day. They took advantage of Bama's eye candy from that perspective. So I like that one from you there, Cole. For South Carolina, I'm gonna go Case and Henry. I mean, again, I think both these are going to come down to the offensive line being able to protect South Carolina's offensive line to win this game. Again, I don't know if it's they'll probably see some better defensive fronts, at least from a scheme standpoint, because Alabama doesn't really rush more than 3 or 4 so far for whatever reason right now. But It's probably Case and Henry. So it starts up front for South Carolina. The foundation is that offensive line. Again, when you talk about Lenore Sellers, who's banged up, Robbie Ashford, the lack of skill guys on the outside, Rocket Sanders being a little nicked up. But if the offensive line doesn't play well, if guys like Case and Henry don't play well, it's not going to matter. So I'm going to focus on him. And then for Alabama, I'm going to probably for Alabama on the offensive side, I'm going to give two real quick. I'm going to go Elijah Pritchett. Again, they're facing Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, two edge rushers. Again, Elijah Pritchett was not great against Vanderbilt. Gave up the big strip fumble to Miles Capers that essentially I think was kind of where Bama fans were kind of like,
that's what they realized.
We are going to lose this game. I think that was kind of the one, like, it's just not going to be our day. So Elijah Pritchett didn't play well. He's going to have a bounce back against the two best edge rushers he's played all year outside of Damon Wilson for Georgia. And I'd say right now these two have been more productive.
They're much more productive.
Game. And then defensively for Bama, I think you're going to need somebody at Quay Russaw, that wolf position, to step up. At least keep contained on the edge with Lenore Sellers. And I think there's going to be plays there on the edge against South Carolina's offensive line, whether it's Josiah Thompson, whether it's a guy like Case and Henry. I just talked about it, right tackle. Bama's edge guys, the front are going to have the big one. Give me, I think, the best guy they have right now. I know he got banged up a little bit against Wisconsin, but I'm going to go Quay Russaw.
Dave, let's not spend a lot of time on this, but a message has to be sent to Malachi Moore. And I think that is just an internal thing because of the way you acted with the C on your chest, the way that you acted as a representative that has your handprint, that has your cleat, that has all the respect by the former coaching staff and the current coaching staff to be that leader and to act the way that you did where you're kicking a football, knowing that you're losing to a team like Vanderbilt. If I'm Kalen DeBoer, I'm not playing him unless I have to. And I know that sounds disrespectful, but captains don't act like cowards. Captains don't act like childish behavior wherever the situation is. And you've heard many people complain about it. But this is one of those games where I feel like I have to see what life is going to be like without Malachi Moore because he is a senior. I might as well test it now. It's an internal punishment. You can't act that way when things don't go your way, especially because of when you allow the emotions to kind of take over. It's a bad look for the organization. It's a bad look for the program. More importantly, it's a bad look for the current coaching staff saying, I don't have respect for you. I don't have respect for this team. I stayed around because I want to graduate from the University of Alabama, but I was a Nick Saban guy, and this is no longer Nick Saban's team. This is Kalen's team. So for my money, he may play in this matchup, but I'm not playing him this week. I'm not, and I don't think he's warranted any playing time for my money.
Yeah. No, I mean, you summed up some of it. I mean, again, Alabama's defense was talking a lot of crap all game when Vanderbilt was moving the football. And again, I don't think it was just like an overpowered physicality thing. Alabama's defense right now just leaves 5 yards to be open in the interior of the defense.
There's so many creases, man. It's just
and they're giving it up. Again, I don't think it's like Vanderbilt just pushed back. Yeah, at times they did, but I don't think it was just like an out physical thing. It was a scheme thing. But to your point with Malachi Moore, I get the frustration. You're a captain. You won a national championship. You probably got a bunch of your former teammates. You're one of the few older guys in the secondary. So you're with a bunch of young cats that you're just like, God, dude, I'm the only one. But again, to your point, two things can be true at once. I get you're frustrated, dude. Everybody's frustrated. You'd seen it on one side. You probably got a bunch of your former teammates texting you, asking what the F's going on. And you're like, dude, I got some young guys. But like you said, that's where the leadership comes in. Like you said, kicking the football, pushing Diego Pavia's helmet in late. It's like, dude, it is what it is. And it's like you said, it went on for like 2 or 3 plays. He's out there just flapping his arms around, stomping around. Again,
it was most
about Kane Womack. He is your coach. If he's trying to sub you out with Bray Hubbard, you need to go, dude. You don't need to shoo Bray Hubbard back off. Again, it sounded like he got better in the locker room when they settled it down. But again, that's something you would see from I don't know this kid from Adams. I don't know if he would do this, but you would maybe get it a little bit. You wouldn't get it, but if it's like Damani Jackson who transferred in, it's like, dude, this guy, come on, dude, calm down. It's our first loss at Alabama. But this is, like you said, this is a guy that was a core guy for years doing this. I get the frustration, but again, dude, to show your ass like that on the field after a loss like that, dude, got to be better. Again, I don't know what they'll do internally, but I'm with you. You got to do something internally from the Malachi Moore standpoint. That was unacceptable.
It's not just, I think, also the coaches. It's the players who are been around with him for as long. Jalen Milroe, especially being one of them. There is a standard set when you put on that script day, when you don that number on the side of your helmet. It's time to start acting like it. Dave, let's lock in some predictions. Kickoff at 11 a.m. Bryant-Denny Stadium. Currently, ESPN 91% favors Alabama over South Carolina. Line currently set at 21.5, over under set at 50.5. I'll go first. I believe South Carolina is not the team that took the field on Saturday. I made this clear. South Carolina is going to win a game that they probably shouldn't. Maybe it was supposed to be LSU. Potentially some people thought it was going to be against Ole Miss because they were a wounded horse at that point. Maybe it will be against an Oklahoma. Maybe it'll be against a Missouri. I don't know just yet. They're going to win a game, if not multiple games, that they shouldn't, because if the defense is better than what we saw, I think just Ole Miss at this point is going to be back to the version of Ole Miss that we kind of feared underneath Lane Kiffin when he showed up in 2024 saying, hey, this is the last dance. So maybe that loss won't look as daunting anymore. And again, Alabama feels like a perfect victim because similar to what we saw with LSU, similar to what we saw with Ole Miss, you're going to get them at a low, and you can attack that low and be able to pulverize them into oblivion in your favor. But with that being said, this is Alabama. There is still a standard set for them making the college football playoff. There is still a belief internally that maybe Vanderbilt is just one of the best teams in the sport this year that nobody is talking about. I mean, there's people frustrated that Vanderbilt gets the win against the number one program in the country, and they're not ranked in the AP top 25, despite being 6 or 7 plays away from having bowl eligibility underneath Clark Lee. So this is not the game. This is not the game where I think South Carolina does it. South Carolina, I still believe, can be a 7-5, 8-4 roster, but they're going to have to drop one to an opponent that is trying to work its way back to being the dominance that it is. Alabama, I think, gets to that level. I think it is a slow performance early on. What's going to really separate it is in the second half. You're going to watch as that depth of the Crimson Tide steps up over a team like South Carolina, and that's just sometimes the name of the game. When you have depth and another team doesn't, they get to coach their way to a victory where you have to give every single play looking like a surgeon, meticulously slicing and dicing and finding the caveats and the holes that allow you to keep things close. I think it is close for the first half. I don't the second. Give me Alabama to win this one 38-17. I just feel like South Carolina is better than this, but also Alabama can't afford to have a sluggish performance.
Yeah, I think the goal, if you're Alabama here, again, this will be Kalen DeBoer's third real exam before we even hit the halfway point of the season. You had the big one against Georgia, the big exam, the hardest exam you had technically on schedule. Then you had another one. Like, do you overlook that team? You failed that one. So you passed, you failed, and this is another one you weren't expecting. How do you handle a loss, your first loss at Alabama to a team you obviously weren't expected to lose to? That'll be a challenge. I think key for Alabama, I think this is how you beat South Carolina. Get off to a fast start like Ole Miss did. If you can get up 2 scores quickly, 14-0, 17-0, get them in hey, they have to go past the football to get back into this. That's where you would want them to be. Again, Bama did not do that against Vanderbilt. They didn't even have a lead ever. Vanderbilt scored first series and never let up. I think Bama scores first possession. I think Bama gets up to 10-0. I think it's something like first half. I think Bama's up 27, I think 20-7 at half is what I would say. I think South Carolina comes out punching in the second half. Bama takes their foot off the brakes a little bit, but I think this ultimately ends up Bama stretching it out. I don't think South Carolina can generate enough explosive plays against Alabama to test this. If I'm them, though, I'm going to just try to possess the football. I'm not going to go try to outscore these guys. If I'm Dow Loggins and Shane Beamer, it's like, hey, we'll try to win in a low-scoring game. Let's take a page out of Andy's book, like I said, out of their playbook. Let's try to possess the ball, get manageable third and situations. On defense, we're dropping everybody back. Keep everything in front of us like Travis Williams did against Tennessee. You're driving the field on us, dude. Yeah, you are not going to go get 60, 55, 70-yard plays on us. Like, if you go score on 8 to 12 play drives, tip of the cap to you. You beat us today. I didn't think you could be patient enough to do it, but you did it. So there you go. Congratulations. I think that's what they're going to have to do. I still think at times, though, that's easier said than done, especially when Jalen Milroe gets outside the pocket, starts to improvise. Ryan Williams is a freak. Bama's still going to generate a couple explosives. I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, Bama gets a big back-breaking explosive play in the second half when it looks like South Carolina's going to get back into this in the fourth quarter to have a chance. I think Bama wins something like 34-17. I think it's going to be something like that.
So Dave and I both agree. We think of the unders. We think of the Gamecocks that will cover. Dave thinks it's a fast start. I think it's a slow start, but ultimately, Bama walks away. They're back on course. They're getting prepared for the third Saturday in October, and they're certainly not overlooking the opponent before they enter Rocky Top, which is going to be one of the best matchups in college football for 2024. But let us know in the comment section down below your score prediction, your overall thoughts on South Carolina, your overall thoughts on Alabama. Which team needs to win more? Which team recalibrates more? Which team ends up looking better at the end of the day? Like, rate, review, subscribe. Follow us on the socials at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show. And real quickly, it just takes 2 seconds. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button because some of you are just watching these videos and not actually hitting that subscribe for the great content surrounding everything in the SEC. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Roll Tide, Spurs up. Let's just get a good game. Peace.